Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 357. I was black here, and after my opponent played e4, I decided to play the French defense, e6. And now d5 is the almost universal move here. If you're going to play something a little offbeat, you can play d3 or one of the knight moves. Queen e2 is interesting, I guess. But a3, very rare. Anyway, my opponent played a3. So I played d5, I guess, just continuing with my plan of building a center. And it looks like I've sort of equalized immediately. And my opponent pushes on with e5. Cancel that. He pushed on with e5. And yeah, maybe I'm a little bit better here. So let's just look at the notation tab. There's no more opening theory. So I just continue to grab the center with c5. This is just a typical setup you get with the French defense. Your e6 is supporting the d5 push, and you get two pawns when you push c5 that influence the center. Usually white has tried to counteract this by putting a pawn on d4, and you get interesting play. Bishop b5 was played here, and just developing a piece and blocking that. Let's see, did the engine have a different suggestion there? It likes bishop d7, trading off the light squared bishop. You know, that's not a bad idea. In this structure, the one defect of the French defense is you've got these light squared pawns blocking in your light squared bishop. So playing bishop d7 and exchanging it off is probably the best move here. Okay, I played knight c6. My opponent plays d4. We get into exchange. And he takes with the queen, taking advantage of this pin. But I can unpin and chase the queen away or force an exchange. So he decides to take. And now I've got the bishop pair. I have two bishops. My opponent doesn't. Sometimes in the French defense, a knight can be a very good piece. So this is not necessarily a bad thing for white. He's just got to find good outposts for his knights and try and keep my bishop bottled up. But still, black has the advantage in this position. Knight f3, just developing, looks like. Knight e7. I have some ideas of harassing his queen some more. Maybe moving the bishop out of the way and going to c6 or going up here to f5. Gaining another tempo. He plays bishop to g5. Yeah, pinning my knight. And I kick the bishop. And actually, I had played a game recently where we got to this exact same position. I played my queen here, and my opponent played something, and then I played my knight here, which was kind of a fork between these two pieces. So there's a position where I can win another bishop and have two bishops against two knights, which is usually pretty good. You have to make sure the position opens up in favor of the bishops. Let's see. The engine likes to move g5 here, but I went ahead and played queen d7, and he took the knight. So we get to this situation where I have the two bishops against the two knights. So that's what I was aiming for, and I sort of achieved my goal. But if we look at this position, it looks like a couple of moves were better here. Just g5, kicking the bishop again, and then developing my knight to f5, which would also have the same. The knight on f5 would also attack the bishop on g3 as well as the queen. So that's probably the best move. There's also the queen a5 check idea here. Things I should have thought about, but I played queen d7, and we get this position where I have a slight edge. I continue developing. I was playing b6 here so I could bring my bishop out to harass his queen some more, and he launches this attack on my king, which is completely unwarranted. Yeah, you know, it's not so bad. This kind of negative 0.3 or 0.4 is a typical opening advantage, although this time black has the advantage instead of white. But when he plays g4, this is just a real weakening move, and you know, unless he's got some killer attack, he's going to be in big trouble here. So I play bishop c5, gaining a tempo on his queen, and getting my pieces more actively posted. I probably want to push the d-pawn forward at some point and free up both of those bishops, give them more space on the board. He drops back to queen d3, and the engine is saying, yeah, go ahead and play d4 right now. d4 has the advantage. It hits the knight, which is pinned. So it's also defended, so it's not a forcing move, but it does maybe create an uncomfortable pin for for white to deal with. Anyway, I played queen e7. I was going to kind of maneuver my queen over on this side if I could, stop white from castling. He goes on with h4, which is actually a good move under the circumstances. Keeps my queen from coming to the g5 square. So I activate my pawns on the other side, a5, I'm not entirely sure what this idea was. It gives a little more space. I guess I have the idea of routing this bishop around like this, where it's supported by the rook now. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure about the idea of a5. And he goes on with g5. So I exchange here, and he can't take back because there's a pin on the pawn. I'm hitting this rook. If he takes, I'll take the rook with check and then win the other rook. So he's got to push forward, and I just push on with g4, hitting his knight. This pawn is kind of loose, and I might as well get some mileage out of it. I don't want to be in a passive position just defending it all the time. So, and if I can push his knight away, maybe some interesting things will happen. Yeah, the engine is starting to like my position quite a lot. So I can take on... yeah, okay, there was just this exchange here, right? I took his knight, got ahead of myself. He pushed his knight away, and then I traded it off because I didn't want to lose the light squared bishop here. I thought this had a good role in this game, and I want to not be blockaded here on the d4 square. So it's interesting. I had some doubts about this, but the chess engine likes the exchange. So because this is my good bishop I'm trading, and I'm leaving myself with the bad bishop. But the follow-up here, so I should go queen g5, which is what I wanted to play earlier. I should continue with that plan. I played queen c7. And yeah, I was wondering, so I knew I was in pretty good shape at some point, and somehow I let him back in the game. So he could just castle queenside here and be in decent shape. He goes after the pawn. I grab his h-pawn, and he can grab my g-pawn, but he decided to castle first. Oh yeah, I can't grab my g-pawn right away because once again I have this threat. So I've sort of forced him to castle, but that's a good move. And then I can take here. What's interesting is taking with the queen or taking with the rook. Okay, it likes taking with the rook better after thinking about it. The problem with taking with the queen, which is sort of my first impulse, is that his queen is hitting this b6 pawn. I didn't want to give that away. Might make things awkward for my king later to have holes on both sides of the board. So rook takes, and he grabs the pawn. And I've still got this pretty good edge here. I defend my rook and also defend my pawn. And he doubles up. So that was a mistake, huh? My best move here is g6. You know, that I have to say, g6 defends this pawn more securely. What happens after f6 is that I'm defending with a queen, but he can continue to pile up on that pawn and make things a bit awkward for me. So so the fact that this was defending my rook here was of lesser importance than the fact that I've left this pawn kind of weak. So I'm forced into... well, I played rook g5. The engine says g5 is the way to play it. Once again, putting the pawn on a square where it's defended. Okay, so rook g5. This is where I give away my advantage. And finally, he pretty much equalizes after this. So after some shaky play in the opening and middle game, I have managed to let my opponent get back into the game, and we got pretty much an even position. So I castle queenside, which oddly enough is the engine recommended move. And he takes the pawn, and you can see, yeah, the material is even. I've got a bishop against a knight, but it's not such a great bishop anymore. The fact that it's hitting these pawns here is not very impressive. I oppose his rook. He should probably just trade, but he gives us check. My king gets over here to b7. I wanted to get to this square anyway to help defend this b6 pawn, which was under attack. This frees up my queen to move, so this helped me out a bit. He dropped his rook back to g6, and I push on with e5. Yeah, I don't need to passively defend that pawn. I can push it forward, get my pawns onto dark squares, and free up my bishop and gain a tempo against his queen. So this move helped me out, and I'm starting to look a little better now. He comes over here to g4. I push on with d4, so yeah, now my bishop is free to move, and my formation is pretty okay. He's got a weak pawn here I can go after, and of course I have this weak pawn. So compensating weaknesses, but black is a little better in this position. He tries knight e4. I was kicking his knight, of course. And now I play the move bishop to a4, threatening to checkmate. And here he went into a long think and played the move queen to e2. The engine is recommending knight c3. This is very unusual. Why does knight c3 work? Knight c3. Of course, I'm going to take the pawn, take the knight, and then queen takes. Oh, my bishop is pinned. The pawn is pinned against my bishop. My bishop is loose. Aha! So he could have defended this position. I thought queen e2, which he played, was the only move. But knight c3 would have defended, so that's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's a little hard to see because there's two pieces in the way. But knight c3 gets one piece out of the way, and when I take the knight, that gets the other piece out of the way, and my bishop is hanging. So after knight c3, do I have something better than d takes c3? I could just retreat my bishop, and the game would go on. Well, the retreating the bishop is rated as even because it's a repetition, but I might be a little bit better. What would he play in this case? He could go back to e4, and then I can play king to a7 and have a slight edge. Okay, so I hadn't totally lost the edge by playing this bishop a4 move, but anyway, he didn't find the best defense here, so that's kind of interesting. And I would have had nothing better after knight c3 than just retreating and trying to find a different plan. Okay, so he played queen e2. Pretty interesting tactics there. Defending the pawn this way, which I was expecting, but this doesn't work because of d3. d3 is a fork, which hits the pawn, hits his queen. He can't take with the queen because of my rook. He can't take with the pawn because of the pin. So he's got to do something else. Queen d1 is probably the best move here. Instead he tried knight to d6 check. Yeah, so that loses immediately. Let's see the best defense. Queen d1, trying to hold on to everything. And then king to a7, just leaving everything set up like that and getting the king out of the way. Okay, maybe we'll see the point of this later. Rook to d6. Defended by the knight. Okay, so he's just trying to stop me from playing bishop pawn takes here with the threat on the queen. If he did a nothing move, say he played a pawn move forward just to support his knight there, then d takes c2 is pretty dangerous. So I wonder about this move, king a7. Maybe I'm just getting out of the way of some checks from his queen or something like that. Anyway, it looks like I'm winning here pretty easily. He tried knight d6, and I can just trade this guy off. And then he tried queen to e4 with a check. So he did get that check, and I moved my king to a7. Then he tried c3 to block this file, but this leads to a mate into. So d2. After d2 check, the king can't take the pawn because it's protected, and they can't go to this square, these squares because of the bishop. So it has to go. The king has to go to b1. It's the only move. Then I queen, and the king has to go to a2, which is the only move, and then bishop to b3 is checkmate. So a pretty checkmate, and my opponent resigned at this point. Interesting game, I thought. I did manage to let my opponent back in the game in spite of his somewhat shaky play. So that's interesting. And hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below. I'll see you again soon. Bye.